Awesome. Um, my name is Igor Tregut. I use he, him pronouns. I'm joining you from unceded Chochenyo Alani land in Berkeley, California. I am on the advisory board of the Young Professionals in Energy SF Bay chapter. I wanted to give a shout out to a couple of very special folks, Eleanor Adachi and Dakota Picardi, who have been organizing this event. I also want to thank the Sierra Club SF Bay chapter for their generous co-sponsorship of this event. And now the moment we have all been waiting for. We're going to hear in a moment from Dr. Tony Reames in conversation with Dr. Daniel Kammen. Dr. Reames is the Deputy Director for Energy Justice at my former stomping ground, the U.S. Department of Energy. He leads a new Office of Energy Justice Policy and Analysis. I wish that was in place when I was there, and I'm excited that it exists now. This is in the Office of Economic Impact and Diversity. Dr. Reames was most recently an Associate Professor of Environment and Sustainability at the University of Michigan, where he established the Urban Energy Justice Lab and the Energy Equity Project, focusing on research and solutions to the production and persistence of racial, income, and geographic energy-related disparities. Dr. Reames also served as a commissioned officer in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and worked in both the private and public sectors as a licensed professional engineer. He's earned a BS in Civil Engineering from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, a Master of Engineering Management. Woo woo, Masters in Engineering Management, Graduates Unite from Kansas State University, and a PhD in Public Administration from the University of Kansas. It's also my pleasure to introduce someone that probably doesn't need much of an introduction for folks who know him. It's amazing, Dr. Kammen, the co-director of the Roundtable of Climate and Environmental Justice, and the James and Catherine Lau Distinguished Professor of Sustainability at the University of California, Berkeley, Bears, with parallel appointments in the Energy and Resources Group, the Goldman School of Public Policy, and the Department of Nuclear Engineering. Dr. Kammen is a coordinating lead author for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, and he has served as senior advisor for energy innovation at the U.S. Agency for International Development and as a science envoy for Secretary of State John Kerry. His research is focused on the science and policy of decarbonized energy systems, energy access, and environmental justice. He has published more than 450 papers, which are available on his laboratory website, the Renewable and Appropriate Energy Laboratory, or RAEL, R-A-E-L. Dr. Kammen was educated in physics at Cornell University, where he received his BA, and Harvard University, where he received his PhD. He's held postdoctoral positions at the California Institute of Technology and Harvard University. So I'd like to warmly welcome our speakers, and please take it away.
Well, thank you so much for YPE for setting this up, and thanks to Tony for carving out time in his amazingly busy schedule to chat with us today. And I'm a little intimidated by the amazing people on this call, and so we will try to get to a lot of your questions and comments as we go. So I thought we'd kind of structure things a little bit to get to know Tony and his own research trajectory, and use that to then move into what's happening federally in the office that Dr. Shalonda Baker and Tony manage on not only in thinking about the Inflation Reduction Act, but what Justice 40 means and what the other things, the CHIPS and Science Act, the infrastructure bill, net zero world, and then from there, move it over to audience questions. So let me just jump in. And Tony's been someone who I've admired for a long time. In fact, we did something like this a couple of years ago with a kind of a similar structure. So I don't think it's going to surprise anybody to need to define what environmental justice is, but just for the sake of kind of completeness, Tony, can you just say a little bit about how you got into or found, or I would say founded, quantitative aspects of environmental justice as a research area? Because long ago, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, when I got my degree, this was not an area, even though we'd all read Dumping in Dixie and some of the classics. But you carved this out in a policy school at a time when this wasn't really a thing. So can you just give a little bit of your kind of, I mean, it's obvious why it's important, but how you did this at a time when there wasn't a whole lot of support to do environmental justice, and then we'll work a little forward from there. So take it away.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Dan. It's great to be in conversation with you again. And I know we always say it, but we got to get together in DC at some point. Thank you, YPE, Igor, Eleanor, for this invitation, and to the Sierra Club for co-sponsoring. I think, you know, a lot of times I talk about my journey into environmental justice and then energy justice by starting with my hometown. So people have always heard me say I grew up in rural South Carolina, in what I consider a quintessential environmental justice community. Majority African-American, has the state's largest landfill and the state's largest maximum security prison. Two industries that came to town when county leaders were desperately trying to find replacement for the tax base that left when the textile industry left. And these were things that, you know, the state kind of, you know, dangled around to different rural counties, seeing who would take it. And as we all know how environmental justice works, communities with more political capital, higher incomes, definitely don't want these kind of locally unwanted land uses in their community. Now, at the time growing up, I didn't know anything about environmental justice, but as was mentioned in my bio, I attended North Carolina A&T State University, which is the largest HBCU in the country, and is also in the home of the environmental justice movement, and learned about Warren, North Carolina in my early years in undergrad. And the light bulb went off. Like, I'm from an environmental justice community, but there wasn't anybody in my community to, you know, maybe fight against things that we didn't want, or even understand that there was an opportunity for something like procedural justice to do that. So fast forward to becoming a PhD student during a time of economic recession. So I went back to school as the stock market crashed and the housing market crashed in the late 2000s, which a lot of people on this call might be too young to remember that. But we had a president then, President Obama, and a Congress that really invested in a sustainable future as a way to come out of the economic crisis. And so a lot of resources similar to the time that we're in now were put into things like sustainability and clean energy and renewable energy and energy efficiency. And so trying to understand what that looked like in communities of color, particularly African-American communities, people were always talking about their energy costs, their energy unaffordability, their lack of energy if they couldn't afford it, their inefficient homes, even participating in previous energy efficiency schemes. And so we also did energy efficiency and conservation in the 1980s. And some of the elders that I spoke to in my qualitative interviews remembered people being, you know, participating in conservation programs, but then losing their homes because of predatory lending. And so I began to learn a lot about this interplay between race, place, and energy in a way that I had never thought about